ask questions, and hopefully they'll be answered by the interesting discussion. And if not, we'll also have a Q&A after this. So make a note, hold on to your questions. My name is Lottie, and I'm moderating this panel. So we are going to discuss the research, fragmented aid and resistance along the India-Myanmar border. But also we will kind of talk more broadly about the role of borders and how very different political, legal, social environments on the India-Myanmar border and the Thai-Myanmar border kind of influence people's lived experiences of access to humanitarian aid, protection, and also, organizing space for the refugees and resistance actors also. So quite broad. So we know that while Thailand, the Thai border has long served as a base for civil society organizing, India's northeast presents a more constrained environment, which we've already talked about in the presentation. And our panel brings together frontline researchers and analysts and experts to explore how cross-border solidarity, donor engagement, grassroots support networks are being shaped by these politics. And also talking about some of the tensions between formal and informal networks for refugee support and refugee identities also. And looking at some lessons that we can learn and extract from both areas. So I will introduce our panelists quickly and then we'll get into the discussion. So next to me is Yuka Wai. She is the lead researcher of the paper and program director at Exile Hub. Her work focuses on documenting the lived realities of Myanmar's resistance networks and displaced communities in exile, with a focus on humanitarian response, civil society resilience, and evidence-based advocacy. And she brings experience working at the intersections of activism, research, and grassroots organizing. And then we have, next to her, Heso Tako. Hello. So he is a postdoctoral researcher based at CMU. And he has been working with the refugee community on the Thai-Myanmar border since 2015. And he was a former chair of KPSN, Karen Peace Support Network, and currently serves as a technical assistant to Karen Refugee Committee, KRC. And he's a member of the Asia Pacific Network refugees. And his latest publication is on schooling, identity, and nationhood, Karen mother tongue-based education on the Thai-Burmese border region. And then we also have Sirada Kamanatatai, who is a lecturer at the School of International Affairs, Faculty of Political Science and Public Administration at CMU. And she also currently serves as a research chair on forced displacement in Southeast Asia at RCSD, and graduated with a PhD in politics and international studies from SOAS in London. And her research interests include the contemporary politics of Myanmar, human rights and international relations, and the politics of international migration. Her ongoing research projects are related to border security on the Myanmar-Thai border after the 2021 coup, and the internationalization of Myanmar's political crisis, especially migration from Myanmar. And last but by no means least, we have June Nilian Sang. And he is a conflict and political analyst on Myanmar, in particular the country's northwest and India-Myanmar border. And he holds a Master's of Social Science degree from Chiang Mai University and a background in academic research and local journalism. June has over 10 years of experience in observing Myanmar's peace and conflict, and he's worked with peace negotiators from Myanmar's ethnic revolutionary organizations, delivering technical support to the Office of the Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement signatory groups. And he continues to engage in facilitation work with the Chin stakeholders while delivering regular analysis on conflict and political issues in Myanmar's northwestern border region. So we have a good range of expertise on the panel today. So without further ado, I think I will address my first question to June. And my question for you is, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the humanitarian response along the India-Myanmar border? And how do these challenges connect with the broader regional political dynamics?
First of all, thank you, Exile Hub, for inviting me as a panelist here. And I'm thrilled to see many familiar faces today. friends and from colleagues as well. And I would like to make one just a small disclaimer here. I'm not part of the report. I'm invited as a panelist here, and I will be speaking in complementary, hopefully, to the reports, and hopefully not to contradict to any of the details which are in the reports. The coup, the 2021 coup happened in suddenly, as we all know, and this sudden coup has led to shrinking the civil society's opportunity for humanitarian response in Chin State and along the border of the India-Myanmar border. And several civil society and community-based organizations, mainly which are formed based on youth groups, also turned into resistance organizations. And because of the power of a coup soon happened after the coup, the opportunities and the survival for several civil societies and responders have been severe, and that is in part of in the side of Myanmar, and also in India, like Yoga mentioned, that India, especially like Mizoram and Manipur, have not been a very long. It's not very long that civil society and responders can have can be based there. Like unlike Thailand or Chiang Mai, where it has been several decades, NGOs, donors, and humanitarian responders can at least have an opportunity to base and engage with international donors and international governments. So adapting the new political situations inside Myanmar, inside Chin State, and inside the northwest Myanmar, and also adapting the Indian political structure. For example, dealing with different level of authorities and also different groups, because in Mizoram, the government is not the only authority, the only groups who have powerful. There are civil society groups which you will have to deal with, and there are religious organizations who sometimes you will have to deal with. So I think these are challenges responders from around Indian Myanmar is facing. And secondly, there is also some kind of legal challenges here. Even though the sentiment from the Mizoram community, including the government, is quite positive, and which give the refugees and the responders to live without certain legal documents or something like that. But it doesn't mean that you are free to do whatever you want. With living in that situation, you can also be the target by certain groups or the community for any reasons, and also one of the challenges which several civil societies organizations have also told us that it's a bit sensitive, but I will not go into details, which is the transactions issues and all, and also engagement with the donor. As I said earlier, there is no direct donor, there is very limited direct donor and NGO presence in Mizoram and along the border, which limited them from seeking opportunities for funding, which is the most important for humanitarian response. And also, even if you get the funding, you will have difficulty to receive your money. And compared to Thailand, or let's say here, there is much less options how you can get the money. And this is not only for the responders, it's also for refugee and families who want to get their remittance from their families. So this is, I think, part of the challenges. I think I got all 5 minutes, right? Okay, maybe, yeah, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, June. My next question, I will go to Sirada. So, like India, we know that Thailand is not a signatory of the 1951 Refugee Convention, so there are similarities in the border context there. So, because of that, what alternative frameworks or policies shape Thailand's approach to refugees? Maybe you can speak a bit on that. And in practice, what kinds of tensions or negotiations emerge between the government policy, local officials, and community-led responses? Some of it maybe anomically sensitive, but maybe you can speak to your expertise on that.
Thank you so much for having me. And actually, I also joined this as on behalf of School of Public Policy as well. Even I'm part of RCSG and political science, so I just want to mention that here as well. So yeah, if you compare two countries, I don't know much about India, so thank you so much for your report as well. I learned a lot from this, and then that would increase our understanding, and also in comparison, as you see that, because as many of people, we talk about that we have established communities here and also established in relations with international NGO. That's why we, relatively, we receive more international support than Myanmar-India border. But at the same time, it's still not enough yet, right, about the protection, about the things. But if we compare in terms of policies, you can see that Thailand kind of like reluctant to admit that we have refugees in Thailand. So if you can see at the official level or legal level, because of we are not signatory to 1951 Refugee Convention, right? So at the same time, Thailand has domestic law telling that these people so-called illegal migrants, but at the same time, in practice, there's a lot of things that showing the reluctance of Thai state in receiving refugees, right? In official level, the terms, they would not use the term refugee or even refugee camps, they use other terms, right? Displaced people who fleeing from fighting, or after 2021, they use the word people fleeing from unrest to call only those who flee from the war or armed conflict along Thai-Myanmar border. So now they limit the number of so-called refugees, so-called people fleeing from unrest, only those who are flee from war that visible from Thai side. So it's very limited of number of people, and also very short term, very temporarily, to make sure maybe weeks or even days, and push people back to current site or current need site. So this is what Thailand trying to limit the number of refugees who fleeing from the conflict. At the same time, for those who are already existing in Thailand, you know about the news, right? Those who already live in Thailand, the camps, the refugee camps, they live for 45 years in Thailand. They just start to change the policy to provide right to work. So this is, I will talk about that in details later. But before we have this very seem to be progressive policy, right? For a long time, right? Thailand only focused very much on repatriation or resettlement of these refugees in the refugee camps. Like during NLD government, Thailand tried a lot to repatriate some of the refugees, but it wasn't successful, of course, because people feel belong to here more, like to the refugee camp more, and there's nothing left in their lands, right? They don't think about sense of belonging. I think Sia will talk about that, can talk about that more. And even the resettlement, right? Thailand rely a lot on resettlement program from the Western countries, but then it comes to that when the Trump administration started, and then more and more, or less and less quotas on resettlement programs. So Thailand, start to think about another option, which is local integration. But actually, like we talked about this for I think 10 years already, that people living in refugees for a long time, I think even more than 10 years. Thailand should think about maybe alternative solution for these people, but then nothing happened. Even they already circulate about the new policy guidance on refugees in the camp, but just because of the funding cut of the U.S. this motivate, this narrative to come up and become the feasible solution for Thailand. Otherwise, Thailand would be invest a lot on public health. So this is one thing that Thailand is very concerned. That's why they start to come up with right to work. And this is the term that kind of negotiate among civil societies in Thailand, academia, and also international organizations, international NGO as well, to also make people to be integrated in Thai in Thai economy. But at the same time, this is the having not only to look through the economic benefits of Thailand, right, but more also about human rights, so that make people to have more dignity. They can survive without just waiting for the recipients, the AIDS receiving, right. So this is the new policy, which we also still curious how it will be implemented, and also there are challenges about how people will move. The mobility of people. At the same time, we also concerned about that. Actually, many refugees in the camps, in these 9 camps along Thai-Myanmar border, they are skilled, right? They are educated, they're skilled. Their English is even more fluent than me or than many Thai people, right? So I think so while Thailand right now, Thai government, even including of course Ministry of Labor, they think about we will have these refugees who become the workers that will fill in the labor demands, for example, in Thai-Cambodian border, for example, which of course, oh my God, is far in terms of geography, and they have to adapt a lot, right, in the new society or anything. And we still haven't come up with final things about the status of these people as well. But I think Ministry of Interior is the one who trying to accommodate and coming up with the type of people, the population, about this, and allow them to mobile outside the areas, but at the same time they will control the movement of the people. So the right to work here for the refugees not mean that you can travel around in Thailand, but there's some certain restriction on the mobility as well. And at the same time about the labor demands, they have to meet the labor demands of Thailand. So that's still something that we have to work on this after the implementation of this policy starting on the 1st of October. Apart from these refugees that Thailand kind of practically recognize them, even don't call them refugee officially, there are another options for people who actually fleeing from war or political conflict from Myanmar. So basically they come to Thailand and maybe register as migrant worker, or maybe even not register, they just come to Thailand and work as migrant workers. We found a lot of cases even in Chiang Mai, right? We found a lot of cases in Chiang Mai city or even in Chiang Mai in other districts that many workers in fresh market, many workers in agricultural farms, actually they fled from the war. In Chiang State, for example, they fled from Operation 1027. So actually at the same time, they are refugees as well while they're working as migrant worker in Chiang Mai province. At the same time, if you look at the political refugee or political exile from Myanmar who fled from the political repression, they have to come to Thailand without documents, right? So there are no other options. They have to be registered as migrant workers. So some cases they have pink card as migrant worker, but they may not really work according to the Thai registration. But some cases as well, they de-skill themselves and work as labeled in the registration, like construction site or other kind of low-skill works, which is, I think, is a loss of human resources as well. But at the same time, this is demonstrate how Thailand being reluctant and then accepting refugees, but let them be kind of like migrant laborers to fill in Thailand's labor demands, and at the same time, Thailand try to make it less politicized and compromise with Myanmar as well, with Myanmar authority as well, to make these people less political as possible. So in saying that they are refugees, they fled from the war, they fled from the political repression, they are just migrants, this kind of thing. This is, in practice, this is how we can see that how refugees from Myanmar come and integrate into Thailand. So this is the situation that if we compare to what's happening in Indian side, also about the tensions, right? I talk about something about negotiation, the advocacy on the right to work of campus refugee. We've been doing that, not even including me, because I just started my career just a few years ago. But I mean, I can see that the dynamic within the NGO and academia that have been talking about this more than a decade, right? Even Ajahn Chian at RCSD, he also launched a report about right to work of refugees, I think more than 10 years ago. So we have a lot of tensions on that, and every time before this policy mentioned in the conference, Thai authorities always ask about, we don't want to make them have right to work because otherwise it would create pull factor. If migrants, if Myanmar people and Myanmar side know about this policy, they would come to refugee camp like a lot, this kind of thing, right? But at the same time, the Ministry of Interior, they have their own registration system. They already have registered many record, they already record camp-based refugee, right? This has become another tension because the statistic, if you look at the statistic, the official one, they just count 77,000 refugees in the camps. While if you look at UNHCR statistic, it's around 80 to 90,000 people. If you look at TBC, the border consortium, it would reach to 100,000. So this is what they also have tensions about who they count as camp-based refugees, who they count as so-called people fleeing from fighting as well. So this is what the tension, and that maybe that not all people in the camps would get the right as well. And at the same time, they keep saying about not creating pull factor, but because of the US funding cut really, and also the labor demands from the Thai combatant side, that they start to accept this. I would at the end I would also want to give credit to the advocacy network in Thailand, including, of course, NGO academia, international organization, but also some government officers in Thailand. They really help. So we need to find that person. I will not tell his name, but I think somebody knows him. Like, he's the government officers that really has passion to help, and that he pushed a lot of agenda and coming to this. So I think we have to find that kind of persons as well when we push about the policy. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how to work this. Thank you. That was very insightful, and a lot of interesting things that you talked about there around the refugee, what determines who is identified as a refugee and how that narrative can be shaped by political actors. Hopefully we can talk a bit more about that later, but I'm going to move on to Yuka. And my question for you, because you are the lead researcher of this paper, we obviously spoke a lot already about some of the gaps and the fragmentation in the aid delivery, but maybe you can speak a bit about how, despite this, a lot of the local groups are still the backbone of support, right, for the refugees and displaced people. So maybe you can expand on, maybe some good practices or instances where these local groups and networks are actually filling the gaps that are resulting from, this restricted humanitarian space and fragmentation.
Okay, hi, hello. Okay, so there are a lot of examples, like most of the work that is being done on the ground are by small, unregistered community groups of people who've decided that they want to do something. So for example, a couple of the groups that we interviewed in Aizol were literally just groups of old guys who wanted to do something. So they got together and then they started a Viber channel of coordinating aid. So there was a group of, they were all different levels of seniority and leadership in different Chin communities who decided they want to set up a small network. They were saying these camps aren't getting help, these ones are getting help, the distribution is not fair right now, so they just started a Viber group, and then they were like, these guys need help. And they send it to this group, and then other people within the group will start to then share aid or share resources. I think one of the key issues that we were seeing was that there is not enough to go around. Like if you look at the difference in amount of aid that is available on the Thai side versus the India side, it's very little support is even actually reaching people on the ground there. So when there's not enough aid to go around, people need to then start prioritizing who they will help. Like here, we have the luxury of not having to prioritize who we will help. So yes, to some degree, but not to the degree that we're seeing on the India side of the border, where groups had not enough medicine to go around, not enough food, not enough not enough education resources. So they will have to pick and choose which areas they will send the help to first, and then which areas they send the help to next. And I think part of the difficulties and the dynamics came up because also people were not, there isn't enough resources to go around. So how are we able to share more resources more equitably around in those areas and make sure that more resources are arriving to those areas as well is a big question for me. One thing that I also saw was the support of Mizo communities. Like one thing that was happening in Mizoram was that families, like when people started arriving, were all chipping in and donating support through church networks. And saying that like people can come and eat for free, people could come and so a lot of the camps that were set up were with Mizo youth networks as well. Like the Young Mizo Association did a lot of work in helping to set up coordination mechanisms across different areas in Mizoram state as well. Inside Burma is a different story. They have different dynamics and different networks inside Myanmar, but at least on the Mizoram side of the border, there were local networks that operated with both from a sort of like, you can call it state level organizing with the Mizoram state government, and then Mizoram youth groups, Young Mizo Association, Young Lai Association, different groups that were organizing on behalf of refugees and people who got displaced. And then you have very hyper-local style organizing, which is people who everyone sees someone in need and then are just like, okay, well, we're going to set up something by ourselves. And a lot of these groups are not registered, they're not official, and it might be actually something that is good to deliver support to these very hyper-local grassroots networks, because they're people who are hyper-connected within the communities as well. It's not people who have come out with an agenda to do something. It's just people who are providing aid and support to people within their own communities or people who they feel affinity towards. So that was something that was actually a big surprise for me when I went there, because I was expecting something that was more similar to the Thai side. I had never been to India, never been to Mizoram before we started this research. And when we went, that was something that was actually very touching. And it was also very interesting to see how people organized without formal networks. Sometimes this need of INGOs for formality and for registrations, that might be a hindrance, saying that people cannot receive support, organizations cannot receive support unless they have registrations. That might be something that is holding people back from being able to deliver support more effectively in their communities. So, you know, part of one thing that I'd wanted to sort of advocate for and push as well is that, okay, look at what are the hyper-local networks that are happening and then see how we can deliver support through them. Not just looking at large-scale organizations, because sometimes hyper-local networks can reach people on the ground. And when we spoke to some of the larger groups like CHO and CHRO as well, they were saying that a lot of the aid inside country that they were delivering were through youth groups in these communities who were gathering up, and it was just young people who had a motorcycle or had a car and were just driving around and then sending aid in their own communities. Say, okay, we need support, and then CHRO has resources that they can deliver. They'll deliver through these hyper-local youth networks and youth groups. And I think that's actually a perfectly fine way to operate. It's just that then this becomes very illegible for donor organizations. They can't track it, they can't count it. And then so people have to do a lot of that work under the table as well. And that's not also fair for groups on the ground. People want to be able to do the work. It's just that these bureaucratic barriers that have been put in place make it incredibly difficult. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about that. Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's very clear, and I think I think the report also shows how these affiliations and identities, kinship networks, can be a means for, you know, really getting aid to the people that need it for inclusion, but also as kind of lines of exclusion when there's limited resources.
Yes.
My last question is for Heso. So we know that some of the groups in Mizoram are new, emergent, post-coup, and therefore maybe inexperienced, or however we want to say it, need more support. On the Thai border, there is kind of long-standing community ties also, but some of the kind of organization of that support has been going on for much longer than it has been in Mizoram. So from that history, maybe you can speak to what lessons can communities and organizations in Mizoram, and maybe also INGOs, learn from and draw on to strengthen their own responses. So.
Well, thank you once again. I think I should begin with a comment that I've learned so much today as well for your research. And I think every question you ask, I want to respond as well from my own context. Hopefully I can jump in between. Well, I don't know, I should conclude that we now have a lesson learned in Myanmar and Thai context, considering we still have around 100 plus refugees. So the camp is still open. It's not closed yet. However, I think throughout the decades and from my own personal experience working with the refugee in Thailand border, I should say I should conclude with some observations. If you think it would be a lesson, then you can take it as a lesson and all kind of possible recommendations as well. I should begin the first thing with the political context. Jan Suridan already mentioned Thailand is not a signatory to Refugee Convention 1951. So very similar. And yet, Thailand actually hosts more than 7 or 9 refugee camps presently. Going back to the history of refugees in Thailand, back in 1970s, there were more than 53 designated temporary shelters along the Thai-Myanmar border. I don't know why they were so kind to us at that time. But however, throughout the years and decades now, the camps were sort of integrated into 7 current plus 2 current camps in Thai-Myanmar border, spreading across 4 different provinces. I don't know, but your research based on what states Mizoram. But in Thailand, there were 9 refugee camps spread across 4 provinces, from north to the west and to the south. But that was the beginning of the refugee history in early 1970, and then the second thing, the role of the I should say the CBOC also. So when refugees came, those refugees didn't came empty-handed. They were former teacher, medic, lawyer. They have expertise and skill. So they became teachers. They became nurses and medic in the camp, and they became community leader. And that's how they continue to contribute to the community within the refugee camp. I'm not talking about other refugees in Thailand or in Bangkok or in Chiang Mai or in Myanmar, but I'm talking about refugees living in temporary shelter. They don't come in refugee camp in Thailand. So those community-based organizations started to form themselves, including women, youth, students, and of course ethnic community-led initiatives were also formed a little bit later. So those CBOC also continue to play a very important role in internal camp management. So I think that's a good thing how refugee camp in Thailand continue to sustain despite of funding constraints, I should say, and other limitations. So and another thing I should say, since the camp set up, the refugee-led leaderships were very much emphasized. In a sense, refugee camps are not actually managed by Thai government. They are managed and led by refugees themselves, including teachers, nurses and medic, camp staff, all leads the camp affair in education, in livelihood, in social affair, in justice program. You don't believe in the camps, they even have the justice program as a system. So it's nothing to do with the Thai, but of course criminal cases were referred to Thai justice system. Other civilian cases were all managed and solved
mediate, arbitrate by the refugee camp justice system. So I think this is a good practice and empowering the refugee kind of leaderships and active participations in internal decisions making, along with the NGO and NGO. And the other thing, I also noticed that internal humanitarian support, since I come for peace building, I usually encourage NGO to commit long-term program. Yeah, not kind of short-term or 6 months or even a year doesn't work in refugee context, to be honest. And that's why some NGO continue to be with us since the beginning of the arrival of refugees in early 70s. Such as the Border Consortium now, MSM is one, but they have fled, and COER stay there, and some NGOs stay working for the past 40 years. So with that kind of commitment, we could see the camps, despite of its prolonged confinement, but it's also growing as a community. So they are living people, they have education system, they have a care program, look like they have everything there, right? I used to call this kind of like an extended village from Myanmar. Basically, it's a nice day, but it's everything's there if you visit the camp at the moment. Yeah. So a long-term age program, I think it's important, and I should say it's a good peace-building program. And the other one, probably the last one, I should say the second last one, I should say. Like Jan have already mentioned, Thailand doesn't have a formal policy over refugee, or there is no refugee law, as far as I know. But the truth, I mean, we need to be clever as refugee leader, because we understand there are governments. I know they have some policy, and they want to have some sort of control, but they are also human beings, right? So building a good relationship. Friendship is very important at personal level. Sometimes they might look a bit stingy. I mean, in terms of like willingness, but I think you talk to them as a person, they are nice. They are open to hear our voice, and that's the reasons why we were able to manage even some top leader from Bangkok, come all the way from Bangkok to the refugee camp, attending meeting. Whole day, sitting and listening. I think it's very admirable. It's kind of leader, but not all of them. We have this commitment, like Ajahn said. So build a good relationship. Informal channel, and informal mechanisms are very important with the government, and I think we have been doing that throughout the decade. And someone is work in many ways. They understand our situations. And the last one, I should say, I think for the past few years, maybe 5, I think Thailand academic are becoming very active in engaging and talking and speaking about refugee and state-led issues. And I think this is very good, and that's why we often come to Chiang Mai University to talk about refugee, and this is great that Chiang Mai it's a space where we share everything. And that's why we started engaging with academic, and because these people are easy to talk to, and they understand quickly, and they also have connections with the government, and through them, like the School of Public Policy, we will come and have workshop and trainings with them, and then since we don't have a direct channel speaking to the central government in Bangkok, but the academic institution have, and there are academic people who have good connections with the government. So we talk to them, we speak to them, and they speak on behalf of us. So I should say it doesn't take easy. It takes quite a long journey to be up to here, and doesn't mean it's over. Like I did mention, we still have around 100,000 plus refugees, but somehow I think Thailand is started taking and becoming more proactive in terms of policy, even though the formal policy has not been totally openly discussed. But I think there are new initiatives like Ajahn Sarita had mentioned, the right to work. Maybe eventually it's other rights might be followed once the right to work for refugee is alone, then maybe the right to reside and the right to access to healthcare services would be followed like any other migrant working in Thailand. Thank you.
So much. Yes, I think we can clearly see sort of some of the pros and cons of having this more informal refugee frameworks in both the Thai-Myanmar border and India-Myanmar border. And yeah, thank you for sharing your observations from your experience. We're running a bit short on time, so what I will do is I will pose one question that I have burning and then also open up for just anything that you want to say and you haven't got the chance to say yet. So something that has really come out for me in this discussion is, you know, people in Myanmar, I mean, this applies to anyone around the world, right, who has to flee from political violence, fighting, war, persecution, get a lot of labels placed on them, right? Refugee in some instances, displaced people, IDPs, internally displaced people, migrant workers, you know, so there's a lot of labels that are placed on them. And then in Mizoram context as well, there's additional labels, right? Your ethnicity, your political affiliation, where you are from, your religion, you know, so I think that given that there are all these kind of layered identities and labels, I know that identification systems are really kind of important topic at the moment. So my question kind of open to the panel is, how do these ID systems, identification systems, affect access to aid and protection and mobility? Is my question, and then also just opening it up for any final comments.
Give us, you know, very informal, you know, access to Chin State, so that we can also give support to IDPs in Chin State. And the concern for Mizoram or Indian authorities is that if they get enough support, the refugee get enough support, their concern is that there may be people coming, more people coming in to India. And so the bargain is that, okay, if you have concerns about that, if we can give enough support to people or IDPs in Chin State, maybe your concerns may be solved or something like that. And that is how, you know, the AIDS dynamics between or along the borders is happening. And in terms of, you know, identifications, I think in Mizoram, refugees are called in their local dialect, Ralkan. And in even some communities or religious organizations, they encourage like Mizo people not to call rather than Rantan, because they say that they are our people, they are our brothers. They are just coming here because of the political crisis and the violence there. So some people are even like suggested not to call them, label them as refugees, and you know, which is very different situation from like Manipur, where you know you have had like inter-communal violence between people who have like political or ethnic relationship affiliation from Myanmar, and also like the larger communities or ethnic people in Manipur. And there are, you may have seen that Indian central government has announced 9 months ago about collecting biometrics to refugees, not only in Mizoram but also across India. So I'm not exactly sure what is the motive or the intention of collecting this data. Maybe according to them is like to monitor or to have as a data the number of refugees or monitor their movement activities within India. However, the concern though is that we can look at this in two perspectives. One is like human rights perspective, where you in order to give your fingerprint biodata or details about you, I think this is also something we have to have like policy at the policy level, where you get the consent from the people who collected that kind of data. The second one is, there's also security concern because there are several contexts in the past and in recent years that the junta, military junta, have requested data of refugees or people who temporarily shelter in another country to the neighbor to that country's government or authority. One of the examples is during the Myanmar visit in China, when he met the Thai Prime Minister, he directly requested information about people who are living in Thailand. Hopefully the Thai didn't give. I hope Thai didn't give. We, in the case of India, we have seen that the shift, the foreign policy shift, and the attitude to Myanmar government, and also the change in relationship. There are several concerns that there may be an opportunity for the junta, and in the case of the shifting relationship with towards the junta. So the concern directly is that there may be information given to the Myanmar authority as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe if anyone you want to say something quickly, and then we'll move on into Q&A.
Well, I think probably compared to India and Thailand is a little probably different because I think the government is not friendly with using digital identity, and that's why I think there is no kind of biometrics being used in terms of iris scan or face recognitions in 2015 when they start registering people, refugee, and that's where biometric come in. But we understand that for some NGO who are trying to use biometric, like iris scan or face recognitions or fingerprint, they have to wait for a long time to get the Thai government approved. But this is from humanitarian program. Not all NGO are using the biometric system, but some in food assistance and healthcare system to register refugee. And because in the camps, they don't use traditional kind of food delivery. They use food card system where they top up money in the cards for refugees to buy food items on a monthly basis. And that's when the refugee have to use facial recognitions of biometric. So we understand some refugee like to do it because it's easier and also give them freedom to buy food items at any time when they want. But we also understand they also have concerns because they feel like they do not understand the system. Well, nobody understands the system, what biometrics are about, and what the data were kept or being used, or how the data are being used, or held or stored after they left the camps or resettled to the country. So most of the city don't have knowledge about it and they don't understand. And the other one is they also feel that there is not much consultations, discussions about the use of biometric, and basically it's a kind of top-down decisions. And of course in some circumstances because of the donor pressures to use biometric. So I suppose in the moment the biometric system is being used in Thai refugees camp, in food card systems, in food assistance program and healthcare system. Yes, and I think there are also both concerns and as well as the likeliness of refugee willing to use this.
Any burning closing statements, or shall we move to Q&A? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I know, it's a long time to concentrate and keep your brains on, but if you have any questions for our panel, please put your hand up and we'll get